Okay, cool. So basically, I'm going to jump right to the point. When I believe that transgender is a mental disorder, and it is classified as gender dysphoria. And when we see like other mental disorders, such as clinical depression or schizophrenia, to be have an extreme example, we our prescriptions to them are not fucking hand a depression patient a shotgun and a complimentary shell. So I was wondering why is it that our first assumption to fixing the problem of gender dysphoria is to fucking cut off your dick?
Sure, yeah, I'll gladly answer that. So the word gender has been evolving. Any words evolve and can change meaning over time. For example, the word awful used to mean a good thing, like to be full of awe, but now we know awful to be as something that's a negative word. Gender is the same exact thing. So you're trying to conflate transgenderism with gender dysphoria. However, it's just not a synonymous comparison.
But that's quite literally the scientific consensus that we have in 20 as of 2020 standard.
So wait, hold on. To start, do you think that words can evolve meaning over time?
Absolutely.
Why don't you
I'm going
think,
off
why don't
of
you hold
today's
that
definition.
why don't you hold that same standard towards the word gender?
I am. I'm quite literally going off of the 2020 definition.
Do you think the dictionary
Actually,
definition of a
correct me.
term
Actually,
is a
correct me.
finite?
December 6th. Okay. Fuck it. I was going off of the. I'm correcting myself. It's not the 2020 definition. It's as of December 6th, 2019.
Do you think that there is objective definitions to any words?
Some words maybe. Yeah, I could see that.
There. Okay. Let me correct you on this first, because I think we're starting with just the premise of you just not knowing how linguistics work. So since words can change over time, we've already kind of established that there is no objective definition to any specific word. For example, when I argue with people and I say that taxation is inherently theft. Obviously, in most situations, there's a lot of nuance to that. But then a lot of people turn around and do the quote unquote dictionary definition of theft. And then they want to say that, oh, it's not technically theft because of the dictionary definition of it. The same way where like the dictionary definition of like the word like bitch, for example, isn't what when I say bitch, it means something different. So I don't think the dictionary definition is such a finite, objective way to define something. I think we have to look at how society uses it. And we see more and more often that society is using gender in a different way than it has been historically.
That's why I'm using up-to-date sources as to how society is using the term.
Did you not hear what I just said? Is my mic muted or something? Isaiah, you heard me speak, right?
Are you not
Yes,
understanding?
Your statement is based off a presupposition that is incorrect. Gender has over time become synonymous with gender expression and detached itself from the word sex. Society is increasingly using the term gender to mean an identity and not keep itself within the strains of the word sex. This trend will continue because, as we know, society becomes more and more progressive over time. So the term gender dysphoria then at a point becomes obsolete.
At what point is it obsolete as of right now?
It's not like an on or off switch. It's not like it's yes,
So,
it is obsolete. No, it's not obsolete. It's obviously there's a spectrum to it, like gender.
Yes, but I'm asking you, like, at what? Like, I understand there's no hard line, but kind of at what point do we start going with your definition?
When okay, my point here is that more and more people are using it, and more people are continuing to use it because we know that as a society we become more and more progressive, meaning that the term gender will be more and more often used to describe one identity until this is not even an argument anymore. So there's no finite, oh, at this point right here in 2022, gender is no longer synonymous with sex. It was the Biden administration or the Trump administration made an executive order. That's not how it works. It's how we interact with
I understand that.
So someone could still use the word ass, for example, and use it to, as a term for like a donkey or a mule, and they'll still be correct, and I'd still know what they're saying. Language is a lot more complicated than it being this or it being that. So your presuppositions are what the problem is.
So as society progresses, so does the dictionary not progress anymore? Is that what you're saying? Is we just leave the dictionary behind at some point?
I believe you're making the assumption that we have objective definitions, which is incorrect.
I'm not saying that. I mean, obviously linguistics are ever evolving. I mean, we've seen that since early Britain.
What was your question?
I'm not saying that linguistics do not evolve.
No, I know. I
basically, is
know
what
what
I'm
you
saying.
said. You asked me a question before. What was your question?
Oh, yeah. At what point, or like, do we just leave the dictionary behind at some point, or does the dictionary evolve too with us as we go?
So the dictionary definitions do evolve. It is a tool to understand linguistics. However, it is not a all end all be all to what linguistics are. Hold on, let me finish. The same way it's like if you ever learn Spanish and you talk in Spanish based off of what you learned in the class, which would go by dictionary definitions, you sound a little off to Spanish speakers because the actual linguistics is a little different than that.
So I'm just gonna go off of what you said. So the dictionary does evolve, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
I understand that
in a sense, yes.
It might have a little lag to it. Let's be honest. It might have a little lag. I concede that.
Sure.
So why is it not okay for me to be using a 2020 definition that has evolved? Would the 1950s definition of gender dysphoria be the same as the 2020 definition of gender dysphoria?
I'd imagine no, it wouldn't be completely synonymous.
Okay, so then I'm just failing to understand what is wrong with using a current standard definition. I mean, we have definitions as like a base.
To chime in on Tristan's thing about like Spanish speaking, like in California and in Texas, the slang is different. So as his thing, like someone who would talk to someone in Spanish in Texas and California might be saying different words that mean nothing to them.
It's almost like I'm sorry. It's almost like language is more culturally influenced than it is by like objective. This is what a word means. You're the one that is making claims, so why don't you back up your claims of transgenderism being a mental illness with actual facts? Go ahead. I'm waiting.
Okay, so the fact that transgender people, adults, have their suicide rate is 10 times that amount of the national average. Also, in transgender youths, over 40% have at least contemplated suicide, if not gone all the way. So I would say that is a good base to start with. There's something kind of off in that general community.
Yeah, so about half of the suicides that do come from the transgender community stem from their rejection of their family. So it seems that there's a lot of other factors that play into suicidality of transgenderism and not just inherent to transgenderism. Because if your family, specifically your parents, accept you for your, whatever you identify as, you are 50% less likely to commit suicide. So it seems like it's more of a external reason why these have such a high suicide rate and not an internal reason.
And you're absolutely right, but that still doesn't
I know I'm right.
Excuse the other. Like, how do you explain the other 20% suicide rate, and then the other, let's say, 5 times the national average? If we're gonna have it.
Are your parents the only people you can interact with on a day-to-day basis?
No, not at all.
Well, then don't you think that there's other people and there's other people in society that could have an effect on you, and it's not just your parents?
Would you not consider your closest friends family?
What's that? Sure. What's the relevancy?
Because you brought up the study that showed that it's family disowned. So
specifically your parents. Specifically your parents.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's including like siblings, but that's besides the point.
I mean, can you also acknowledge that like even like the discrimination against transgender people are a lot higher as well, and that could play a factor? Can you also like the murder rate on transgender individuals is also higher?
We have the most tolerant culture in 2020 than this country has ever had. Why is the suicide rate still so high?
This would be like the equivalent of saying, "Whoa, black people commit 13% or 13% of the population, but commit 50% of the violent crimes," and then not act like there's external factors that go towards that. Why do black people commit such a disproportionate amount of crime? It's like their murder rate is like X or 12 times or 10 times or 6 times or whatever it is. Obviously, there's external factors that indicate why. So do you have any other evidence besides the suicide of why you think transgenderism is a mental illness?
Okay, so
anything else?
What is the evidence to prove that or clinical depression is or just depression in general is a mental illness?
Can you repeat the question?
What defines? Okay, so why is depression considered a mental illness?
Depression is considered a mental illness, specific effects on you that is abnormal and affects your mood.
It affects like what? Okay, so affects your mood. So you don't think that transgenders have like abnormal effects on them?
Do transgenders have abnormal effect? Based off of what the definition of gender has become, I would say no. And increasingly is becoming.
What has the definition of gender become?
So, like I said before, the definition of gender has historically been more synonymous with the definition of the word sex. At least in the American context. I'm sure there's other like genderless societies that have existed. However, I can't quote a specific one to be honest. But it's becoming more and more synonymous with the term gender expression. So gender has always been arbitrary. Why do women wear a dress and men wear suits? Why do women generally have their hair longer than men do? It's 100% arbitrary, and it always has been.
I'm still not seeing the difference between it's a mental disorder. It's almost impossible to track. Anyone could say they have it.
Okay. What's your point?
So are you saying that it's like everyone is faking depression or?
Well, no, because there's actual quantifiable things like neurotransmitter levels that you can see to determine whether someone has depression or not.
Like, I have a question for Bren. So how do you find out like you have this mental illness? Like, what quantifies?
Find out?
Yeah.
Well, I think people who do have this illness would say they are born with it.
But how do you find
think
out?
Do you think every transgender person has gender dysphoria?
Yes, by definition.
Sure.
Like for instance, like finding out a baby has Down syndrome or is autistic, they can do tests. Same thing with depression or bipolarism. Like
yes, there are different levels to mental disorders. You are right.
But they can test. They can find out what this person has. So how can we find out that person has this mental illness?
This is such a new thing that has come up. And yes, all you're saying is that there are different levels to mental illnesses.
Let me ask you a question then, Brandon. Do you need a single other mental illness that you can't quantify? Like gender dysphoria? Where you can't look at a finite thing and numerically quantify it?
No, I think the reason for that is just because of how new the subject is of gender dysphoria and just gender in general and how it's changing. We just don't have very many studies on it.
Do you think being gay is a mental illness?
According to the definition of gender dysphoria, wait, hold on, let me pull up the definition and make sure I got my shit correct. I don't believe that being gay or lesbian is a mental disorder due to the exact definition of gender dysphoria.
Okay, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say on that, to be honest. Do you have any other contentions?
I kind of wanted to ask you to get your opinion on the gender neutral bathrooms. I was gonna start out with the question. See, I can't really find my own solid stance, but I was gonna ask, why is it that we separate men and women's bathroom in the first place?
Tradition, most likely.
Most likely. Yeah, I don't believe that's the case.
I mean,
it was,
why did we segregate like black people from white people bathrooms? Back 100 years ago.
Because black people were viewed as lesser.
Okay. This is the same kind of logic that goes in from transgenderism into like different races, for example. So you can make the same argument, let's say, I don't know, 75 years ago, saying that, I don't want blacks to be in my bathroom, but it's not statistically bearing, because just because a denomination of people think that something can happen doesn't mean it can actually happen. So the fear mongering that goes on with gender neutral bathrooms is completely unfounded.
Is there a higher risk for a transgender man transitioning to a female than a just black man or a black boy or something like that?
I don't understand your question.
Is there a higher risk of a woman being violated, to keep it family friendly, by a transgender man than a man being in a black bathroom, a white man being in a black bathroom? Is there any?
So there is actually research on this. So from UCLA, they did a study on the risk of transgender or gender neutral bathrooms and found no link between trans exclusive policies and bathroom safety. This is the only study I could find in the short term that I
It's
did
probably the
prepare
only
for
study
this.
there is.
Yeah, and they
be honest
found
with
I can quote it if you would like.
No, I believe you.
Yeah, so the only data that I've come across that has studied specifically gender neutral bathrooms and them being more or less safe with trans individuals has found that there's been no link between less safe environments.
You sold me on that. I still disagree with you on the definition of gender dysphoria. But
Let me ask you this, Brandon. Do you think in 150 years that this will be a discussion? Do you think that there'll still be people saying that gender, or a large amount of people saying that gender is synonymous with sex?
Probably not. I feel like the dictionary definition it'll easily have caught up by then. It's already just about caught up by now.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. Do you have any other contentions?
I have a question for Tristan.
Sure.
So how do locker rooms, showers, and changing facilities fit in this equation?
So I
believe I know it's
believe.
Tristan's question, but I'd
Go
say
ahead.
it goes under the same UCLA study that they did.
Yeah, I find no reason to discriminate between a bathroom or a locker room or a shower. I find no reason. I would argue more in a gender abolitionist sense, to be honest. Like
Can
I
you
find it
elaborate?
really.
So you,
Sure, yeah. So I can elaborate. So I find it really funny when I have like a lot of people that like when I talk to about this, they talk about like, oh, having a man and a woman in the same bathroom, that's not safe. Well, it's like, do like gay and lesbian people have like are they super rapey in like bathrooms? No, of course not. Is it unsafe to have a gay man and a boy in the same bathroom? No, no one thinks that. It's all fear mongering is all it is. Does that cover up the contention you had, Isaiah?
Yeah, I just wanted to see how you respond to that question.